Hi, and welcome to the It's Just Business podcast with myself, Richard Price. In this podcast, I interview some of the best business minds and entrepreneurs, diving deep into their business journey to get those valuable business lessons they have learned for entrepreneurs like you to succeed on your business journey. So listen up, listen in, let's begin. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the It's Just Business podcast with myself, Richard Price. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Mike Turner, and he is the co-founder of a lovely company called Bird and Blend Tea. Hi, Mike. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Richard.
Hello. All right. So let's get into it. Could you tell us a bit about yourself and the idea where Bird and Blend came from?
Of course, sure. So as you said, my name's Mike, and I founded Bird and Blend 8 years ago now with my co-founder Krisi, and we'd been kind of wanting to start a business for a little while. We'd worked in various pretty rubbish jobs, and it always felt was kind of more to life than what we were experiencing, and so I'd wanted to do something where we could create opportunities where people would feel valued and where we could do more than just this kind of day-to-day slog, I guess. And hadn't found anything. We sort of tried different things, and we'd ended off going to Canada, and we're kind of bumming around in Canada. I was working as a ski instructor and in bars. Krisi was working for a tea company. She'd already kind of worked for a couple of tea companies. And we started talking about this idea of combining kind of customer experience, which is really what I was doing as a ski instructor and in bars and hotels and that sort of thing, with her knowledge of the tea industry, and that could be something which could work really well. So we decided the town we were in had no jobs in spring anyway. You could kind of only work in winter or summer. So we thought, well, let's go back to the UK for spring. The Olympics were on in London, and I was keen to be back in London for them anyway. So we came back and tried this idea of starting a tea company. So we essentially built what was called brBird tea at the time in about 6 weeks. I think it was a month to 6 weeks from when we kind of landed in the UK to when we did our first event and had our website live and did sales and things. And we went from there. And from there, 8-9 years ago, we're now spread across. We have 11 stores dotted around the UK. We're now called Bird and Blend Tea, alongside our warehouse and office and all that sort of thing down here in Brighton. We employ just over 100 people. And what we do is we create this amazing range of kind of exciting blends of tea, and then we retail those directly to customers, and we try and do those in really highly experiential ways. So either through our stores, where we're pre-COVID, we can obviously have really close experiences with our customers. Right now they're all shut. Or via our website, where whilst it's more difficult to have that personal touch with someone, we try and as best we can do that.
Fantastic. That's amazing. And so what did year one look like for you? Was you testing on the markets, or did you go straight in and, get a store initially? Like, how did you sort of validate your idea? Or
no, so exactly what you said, straight onto market. So we didn't have any money behind this. We had the money that we'd saved to get us through spring, had we stayed out in Fernie, and credit cards, but couldn't afford to just open a store straight away anyway, and we weren't sure whether it would work. As I said, we'd had various different ideas, and none of them had ever bitten, really. So the idea was to come back, do the spring, just do some markets and things, and see what went from there. So we started off on markets, and for kind of the first year, that was all we did. So we're doing 3 or 4 markets a week. I guess the first summer, we wanted to validate whether this whole idea of will people spend money on fancy tea, fundamentally. It's fancy tea with a smile. Whether that worked. And interestingly, when we started, we thought that we were going to be all about drinks. So similar to, a huge example to match, but what Starbucks did with coffee, we thought, well, there's an opportunity to do that with tea. You can do tea lattes, you can do smoothies and iced teas. And that was actually what we did at our first couple of markets. And we realised that actually it was quite difficult to do that. You need to do very, very high volumes. But quite a lot of far cleverer and far better placed people than us had tried that and had lost a lot on it. And for actually what we seem to be getting the attention for was we created about 12, I think, blends, which the idea of them were they were just going to be ingredients for our drinks. And those were what people seemed to like. And then was, of course, the blessing that they could purchase them online, and it's actually an ideal product for selling online. So we kind of pivoted, is what I would say now. It sounds very clever, but probably at the time bumbled towards blends. And yeah, so we moved on to validating whether that would work. And our next thing, once we kind of had a tick of we think it could work, was, well, what do we want to do? And we had approaches from a couple of the supermarkets quite early on. It turned out or Krisi, I should say, had a skill for creating these blends, and so that got noticed. And we had this moment of, should we be just about the product and trying to get onto the shelves of Tesco or somewhere and pushing that? Or do we want to have more of a connection with our customers? Because that had always been my background. I didn't really have any interest in sitting at a desk, just managing accounts, which is the way I felt it would be if we were kind of working with those multiples. I wanted to be in front of people and working with team members. So we decided we wanted to go down the retail route. We started doing markets in the different kind of places which we thought it could work. Right. Ended up coming down to Brighton for a market, sold out. Everyone was really nice. 2 weeks later, we moved down here, spotted the shop that we wanted, spent about a year trying to convince the people, the landlords, to take a risk on us. Eventually got into the shop, and kind of it all went from there, really.
Wow, amazing. It's an amazing story. I love the fact that you validated before, you was testing, and then, you switched your idea. You saw that there was a strong signal from people with the blends, and the demand and the feedback, and then you went on to iterate on that. Sounds smart, but yeah, you essentially pivoted, and you saw where the money was. But interesting that you had a conscious idea that you didn't want to go onto the shelves immediately. I mean, that sounds very appealing, right? If you think about the volume, the scale that you could easily reach if you went on these shelves. It's interesting that you veered away from that.
Yeah, and there's been various times that we've had similar kind of decisions to make, opportunities which have come up, and we felt they could take the whole business in a different direction. Which one should we do? And I think we've always been fairly good at making the decision that we think's right for us, rather than just necessarily that year's profit and loss, shall we say. So another example was when we were probably 2 years old, we were approached by a very large brand which is in the kind of diet industry, and they wanted to do a diet tea with us. And that probably would have doubled our turnover overnight, I guess. And we really thought on that for a long time. Well, that's a great opportunity, to work with that business and the things we would learn. But equally, we've steered clear of all the kind of health and functional side of it. And do we want to get involved in that? And decided not to. And I think looking back, that's probably the right choice to have made. So, yeah, when we talk to the team, we talk about how the night when Krisi and I decided we're going to do it, or the day we decided rather, we were skiing and we went to the pub and we wrote this list of things which would be important to the business. And we still, when team members go through the induction, they see a picture of this. I don't actually know where the original is. We should probably find it, have it framed. But they see a picture of this list, and it's saying things like, treat people right. It had zero waste, but I think that's morphed to being as close to zero waste as it's possible to be. Yeah, and to be more than just about bottom line, and that seems to have worked for us.
That's great. I love the way you've come from a place of principles, from almost day one, and you've kept that and you've maintained that. It's really good. And the fact that you've written it down and you can always look back at it as well. So you've set your destiny there.
Yes.
So how did year one look like in terms of when you opened the store? So you had been trading on the markets for 1 year prior to that, and then
about 18 months. Yeah.
18 months. And then you opened your first store in Brighton. How was that?
Not a big store, no. So it's I think it's about 350 square foot, which is pretty small for a shop. It was, I think the biggest overnight change was that suddenly we needed people. It had been me and Krisi doing everything up to that point. I think a couple of months before, whilst we were kind of planning for the store, a girl who lived down the road from us in the town we were in had kind of started coming and doing a little bit on like a Wednesday afternoon or something for us. So it technically been our first employee. But when we opened a store, we suddenly needed a team. So it went from the two of us to, I think there were 8 of us originally. So that was kind of a big change, that we moved from doing everything to being managers. Otherwise, it was much the same. We'd learned a lot from being on the markets, and we tried to make the in-store experience match what we had learned from doing those markets as closely as we possibly could. And actually, still through to today, a lot of what I learnt over that time still carries through in the design of the stores and how we operate.
I guess you don't a fruits and veg store. You don't shout out, "Get your tea, get your blends."
we don't. But what we do is we sample. We learn when on markets, you realise that you need people around your table, because people are sheep. They get attracted to where there's a crowd. And an easy way of getting a crowd is that you hand out a sample. And likewise, when you're selling kind of tea which tastes of cherry bakewell or something, it's not something which anyone leaves their house looking for. It's not like if I'm going to get a loaf of bread, there might be better bread and worse bread. No one leaves their house thinking, I need some cherry bakewell tea today. So you need to kind of persuade them that they do want this. So handing out samples was a big thing, and that transitioned across. And the last year with COVID, we've not been able to do that. But forgetting COVID, normally there's someone outside our stores. If the store isn't full of customers, there'll be someone outside with a tray, handing out samples to people, chatting away to people. So although we might not be shouting, "Get your tea here," I guess we're visually shouting.
Subtly, with the lovely brew of tea. Yeah.
That's it, exactly, yes.
The aroma just drifting around the high street. Yeah, I love it. Obviously a shop is quite a big undertaking. How long until it was profitable?
I think we made a profit in that first year that we had the store open, So we've always run things relatively lean, is the trendy word I've learnt. We did, yeah. Had a spreadsheet open in the background, so I was checking. We've always run things fairly lean, so the costs have always been pretty low. I know now that the place where we opened is absolutely fantastic for if it's probably the best street in the UK for us to be on, which
great
is partly a smart decision. We had moved to Brighton, we had looked around the city and chosen a place which was good, but I don't think to the extent that I now, I think a lot of that was luck or happy coincidence, and actually almost held us back when we opened the next couple of stores, because we expected it to come just as easily, and sadly not. That store in Brighton still continues to be our busiest store, despite us having it's one of the lowest rents. We have ones which the rents are many times what we're paying in Brighton, and we can't get as many customers in through the doors. Yeah. I'd say that opening that store worked really well. We were profitable in that first year, and it's going back to the validation point. We'd already known we didn't just want one store. If we were going to do retail, we wanted to have a few of them. So what we were doing with that one store really was validating. We tested that customers were interested in the product when we'd done markets. The next thing was, well, are they interested enough to come into a shop solely dedicated to it? And can we do enough volume to pay all of those bills? So our kind of mission over those next couple of years was trying to prove that in order to then open another couple. I'd say we're always testing and validating. Even now, there's the mission that people are on at the moment is trying certain things so that we can try and scale that.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's crucial as a business owner to test and validate and constantly reflect, and not just go gun-ho all the time, because that's when you could be up for losing big numbers, and it could scar you quite deeply. So the fact that you've edged your way in and each time having a checkpoint, I think is it's a very smart and prudent thing to do. Okay, so you had relatively good success with Brighton. You saw that. What was your next store? How many stores were you opening? Because I guess you've been going for 8-9 years, and you've got 11 stores. So it's quite it seems like a one store a year almost, but perhaps it wasn't quite like that. So
Yeah, so they came in fits and starts. So actually getting a second store was a real challenge, which I think everybody expects having a first one to be hard. But in compared, no landlord will take us seriously to open a second one. I think because landlords know that if you're opening one store, you're going to be behind the counter. It's relatively easy to make money when you're not necessarily having to pay wages and things, because that's you. As soon as you go to two, suddenly you have these central costs, and it's quite hard to cover. So a lot of businesses fail at that point.
Right.
So we spent quite a while looking in various places, trying to convince landlords, and none of them would take us seriously. Eventually, we got a shopping centre just down the road in a town called Tunbridge Wells to let us have a try as a pop-up. And that, again, was testing some things. It was testing Tunbridge Wells as a very different demographic to Brighton. And it also, being inside a shopping centre, is very different to the kind of trendy indie bit of Brighton that we're in. So we went with them, and at the very moment that this shopping centre said yes to us, a place in Bristol, which we'd been trying to convince them to let us take it, I think as soon as they saw, big pension funds putting a tick next to us, this private landlord in Bristol thought, well, in that case, they've obviously done their due diligence, so I'll go with it as well.
Right.
So we actually opened in Bristol and Tunbridge Wells within a very, very short space of time. So went from 1 to 3 very, very quickly there.
Wow.
And the same things carried on, actually.
And how did you find your role, going from, you're in your community or your local, to the now having to manage 2-3 stores, one pretty, good couple of hours drive in Bristol. How did you how was that transition?
Yeah, and it wasn't just that. It was also at the same time, we had the office. It's a podcast, you can't see me doing air quotes, can you? The office and warehouse and all of that was originally in the basement of the shop in Brighton. At the same time, we'd actually moved out to warehouse, would be a glamorous term, but to a unit out of the other end of town. So I was also separated from the original store for the first time. It was interesting. So that, I guess, as I said previously, when we opened the first store, I went from doing everything to being a manager. This was the step where we went from being a manager to managing managers. So a lady who actually only left us a couple of months ago and left us for a company who works on the same floor as us in the same building, but has worked for us since day one in the Brighton store. She became our manager in Brighton, and we recruited managers in Tunbridge Wells and Bristol. And that was a huge, again, test. Does it work for us to inspire the passion, which is really what drives the business, in a manager over in Bristol, who their first interaction with the brand is probably coming along to an interview with Krisi and I. And there were certainly challenges with that, but we managed to get there with it, I would say. And the whole time online has been really important to us, and we've been able to grow online at the same speed as the rest of the business, so it represents a big chunk of what we do. And that, of course, makes it easier to justify everything else. So what I mean by that is for us, the stores are kind of a showroom. We expect our retail business to kind of break even, cover its costs, but it doesn't really make money. It's difficult to do that on the high street right now. But the website is the bit which needs to cover all of the central costs and that sort of thing, and justify it. So it was really important we got that the way those two work together right.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I feel like that is the way, and probably it has been, high street has been, it's turning out to be a showroom, because just the lack of numbers, etc., especially now. But it definitely seems like that's the way things are going, where businesses will focus more online and just use the storefronts to kind of showcase what they have and provide that sort of customer experience and build that connection. Mike, you seem to be someone who's quite passionate about customer service. Um, what kind of things have you sort of put in place, and how have you been able to build a community? What kind of approach have you had with Bird and Blend?
So the single biggest thing is in the people who work with us. And I hopefully come across as if I'm passionate about customer service, but I am probably the least excitable person in our business. And, sometimes joke with some of our managers that I wouldn't get a job in our stores because I'm not, annoyingly happy, if that's the phrase. I'm not chirpy enough for it. So we have people who are so excited to be there and so excited to be interacting with customers. And that's a different thing to sales. So they're not necessarily people who are great at sales, and that's not the bit which we focus on with them. Yeah, clearly there is some training around sales, and we need to pay the bills. But actually, we have people who are happy to have someone come in and spend 40 minutes chatting about nothing to them, and then leave with a smile on their face. Because although they might not have bought anything, they might tell their mum about the nice time they had, and then their mum might come in to have the same one and might buy something from us, and that's how it spreads. So our focus is on getting people who are naturally like that, and then giving them the space to do that. So we have as few rules as possible. We focus a lot on training the team around the products, because we have, at any one time, we might have 100 blends on sale. The team are effectively the packaging. They need to be able to pick what a customer might like and use the products to provide an experience to the customer. So we give them those tools, and then we kind of let them run with it, and we share successes, so that when one store has an idea on doing something, they're encouraged to stick pictures of it and what they're doing up on. We've got a big WhatsApp group which everyone's in, and then the other guys would be like, "Oh, that's cool, we're going to do that tomorrow." And sometimes, it's hard. It might go too far sometimes. It needs reining in slightly. But in general, by having super enthusiastic, super passionate people, and just giving them license to run and be passionate and have as few rules restricting them as we possibly can, it seems that they provide pretty good times to our customers.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the fact that you've got a WhatsApp group with everybody in. So it could be 100 people.
It can go a bit
there.
mad sometimes.
No, that's great, and I think it's important, and it goes to the fact that you're kind of considering your storefronts as a way for your customers to discover you and build a connection, and then once they got that connection, then they can then start looking at the products, and then they'll have a bit more intimacy with just more than just tea.
Yes, yeah.
That's great. I love that. It sounds like you've got quite a strong culture, and at least I think if it feels like the product in itself would attract people that have an interest in tea, or customer service, and customer delight, and if they don't have to be pressurized to sell, and have these targets on the board, don't know, maybe you do have that, then they're coming in and they're enjoying what they do, and that will then reflect on the brand and their interactions with the customers. So that's great.
Yeah. I mean, we do have targets on the board, and we're quite analytical as a business. So we will track the number of people walking past the shop, the proportion of those who walk into the shop, and the proportion of those who will then buy. But I think rather than some companies, which that will be the most important thing, and everything else is how you achieve it. For us, we're open enough with the teams that a part of what they need to do is put cash into the till, because that is what keeps the whole thing spinning. That's how we pay them, and because they believe in it enough, they want to hit the budgets for that reason, than just because they're arbitrary budgets that the boss has set.
Right. It's not like these big stretch goals that these unrealistic goals that we need to hit double this year, otherwise you're out. We just need to keep the lights on, and you guys just do whatever it takes.
Exactly right. Yes. Yeah.
I love the fact that you said that you're quite analytical. You look at those numbers. What does your scorecard look like? What are you looking on a weekly basis or monthly basis?
In terms of the commercials, and the stores in particular, I guess the big ones which we look at are those ones I just mentioned. So capture rate, the proportion of the customers who walked past who walked into our store. And what that tells us is, are we going out and sampling and interacting with people outside and letting them know that we're here, or going and doing events, and or do our windows look right? Then the second one is conversion. So what proportion of the people who come into the store purchase from us? And that tells us, are we offering a great service? In general, if you're offering great service, people buy. If you're not, people come in, wander around and leave. And then average transaction value, ATV, which again feeds into customer service, but is a little bit more salesy, I suppose. So in terms of the stores, on the commercials, that's what we would look at. And actually on the website, it's fairly similar. We'll also look at various other bits, which I think other businesses wouldn't be quite so focused on. So right from the beginning, we would look at the number of people who had signed up for mailing lists in stores. We really knew that the omni-channel is a very trendy word at the moment, but kind of from day one, that was what we were going for. That we wanted it to be the same customers coming into our stores as when they went back to London. Lots of people in Brighton on day trip from London, that they would keep buying from us online. So we wanted to make sure that this was only the start of their journey with us, if you like, when they'd come in. So we were looking at that a lot from the beginning, and we continue to this day. We never really tracked customer service very well because there's never been a very good way of doing it. We sort of watch online reviews and that sort of thing. But I think we more got a feel from it from those other bits. But we have, during the pandemic, moved to using NPS survey, which pings out to all of the customers, and we have flyers which we give out and things. And that was partially because we were really struggling with... We'd got our customer experience down pretty well. You know, we've always experimented with various things. The customer experience when someone came into the store, I feel like we were pretty strong on. And then COVID came along and changed everything. We couldn't give people samples. We couldn't give them tin lids to smell. Everything changed. So we needed fast feedback on how to make sure that we were still giving great service, that customers were feeling safe. But equally that we weren't at the... we kind of used this phrase of COVID Gestapo. You know, when was this period where you would go into a shop and you were straight away yelled at from behind the counter of what the rules were in that shop, and you thought, I don't want to come in if I'm going to come in and just be shouted at because I'm doing what next door want me to do rather than what you wanted me to do. So trying to find ways that we were making the customer feel safe and be safe, whilst in a nice way where they were feeling welcomed and things. So we started using NPS for that, and I think that now we've gotten the habit of it, we'll probably stick with that. That's one which is monitored monthly rather than weekly, just to make sure there's enough responses coming in to be meaningful.
Now, just on that, 2020 has been a crazy year for many business owners. March 2020, everything went to a halt almost. Can you sort of think back, although you probably just want to put it in the back of your mind, it could have been that painful, but could you just think back for a moment and just walk us through how you managed to navigate your way around COVID? And
so we had an extra dimension when it first started, which is I had gone to America for a month from the 28th of February. So I was just as it was starting to become a big thing, I was over in America and I decided I wanted to go and ski and work remotely. And it was kind of an experiment in remote working, which a year later, I've well and truly proved to my team I could do my job remotely. So it was kind of that first month where it was slowly becoming more of a thing during March. We were here. I think it went from people, we had an Italian lad who worked in our office who was talking about his family back home. I can remember in January and February, and us all thinking, God, it's awful what's happening over there, but not really clicking that it was coming to the UK. I think I was hugely naive. Looking back, I was certainly one of the people saying, no, it's not a big deal. We don't need to worry about it too much. I've been well and truly proved wrong. So it went from that to whilst I was out in America, it was clearly becoming a bit more. We were, it seemed that we were upping our cleaning regimes and things to start with. And it got to the point probably by mid-March that at 3 a.m. my time every day, I was waking up to have a phone call with there's 4 of us who were directors, 3 plus me. with them on what was going on. We then obviously got to the point where we were starting to feel, should the stores be open? And what was difficult there is that there was different feelings in different areas of the country. Some areas of the country, it was fine. Our teams were happy. Customers were happy. Some areas of the country, there was a very different feel. And it was obviously with everything going on, it was very hard for us to know what was going on, really. And it all seemed to be ramping up far more suddenly. So we then took the call one day. We spoke to some of the team in one of the stores, and it just became clear that they weren't comfortable. So we thought, let's shut the stores. So we had this sort of strange day that we called round all the stores, and we sent a kind of all company email saying, when the stores close this evening, they won't be reopening for at least 2 weeks. We have enough money in the bank that payday, which is in 2 weeks, everyone will be being paid in full in the next 2 weeks. So by then, we will be able to tell you what is going on after that date, because right now we don't know. Which was a pretty terrifying thing to have to send out to everyone. Fortunately, then a couple of days later, everyone was mandated to close anyway, and the furlough scheme was announced, which took that piece of pressure off a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm drifting onto a tangent here, aren't I? This
No.
You wanted the whole year, not just literally the week we shut, didn't you?
That's fine.
So we had a shift to being an online-only business overnight. And it was interesting. So when we sent out that email, we actually said, same goes for warehouse. Everything is closed. No one is to go to work tomorrow. And showing how great our teams are, the 3 department managers for our back of house. So we have a production team, a fulfillment team, and a warehouse team. The 3 of them said, we want to come into work. We want to keep working. How about we come in tomorrow when no one else is, and we make the place safe? And so they came in, and we started making changes to our back of house to allow us to operate in a more distanced manner. What changes we could, we moved to doing kind of day and evening shifts and working 7 days a week, so that there were less people in. The same amount of man hours were being done over a much longer amount of time.
Yeah.
And the whole kind of office team really focused on online. So we knew it was the only place we could bring money in, so we put a big focus in there, and that worked well. And our online sales shot up. So we had a slightly intense few weeks where we were trying to make sure that all of our kind of front end online systems, so the website and that sort of thing, was running properly with the volumes that we were doing. And at the same time, trying to get our back of house team able to function effectively for these higher volumes, but whilst safe, and whilst global supply chains, the
Coming to a halt.
Coming to a halt, and the composition of sales that we were getting, the product mix was totally different. It was moving to people home working, and they wanted big bags of tea bags rather than lots of little things to try and have fun with their friends and have cocktails. Plus, of course, whatever percentage, probably 50% of the business's stock is tied up in all these stores, which no one can go to release it and send it back to us.
Oh, yes.
So, I mean, our ops director, Matt, who's been with us for years, is I'm glad it was him and not me. How he kept things rolling. He's incredible at his job. But I think we had one stock outage or something. Like he was able to keep the balls on. We did various things. Like we're still in this. I mentioned earlier we had a unit in this multi-use building. We're still there now, but we've just gone from having 1 unit to we now have 10. And we started doing things. We're actually in the process of moving to a proper warehouse, which is exciting. We're replatforming the website and moving to a new warehouse at the same time, which if anyone listening thinks that's a good idea, it's not. It's I feel like I'm fighting off a nervous breakdown. But we took actions. Yeah, it's like that. I sent someone a Slack earlier, which was just capitals.
You could have those moments.
Yeah. You can't just shout when you're not in office. So we did things like literally taking out walls and things. Where our office was, we took the wall out from where the office was to the next door unit to make a bigger production space. We bought some machinery, so we moved to a little bit more automation because again, where we were hand packing products and with a couple of people next to each other on a production line, that couldn't happen anymore. So actually, it's a good time for us to invest in bits and pieces. And we managed to kind of get everything running so that they could run quite efficiently there. We've then had a year of, once we got through those first few months and got to a fairly good place, I guess by late summer we'd have been there. It's then just been sort of the havoc of opening, closing, dealing with
the
all
uncertainty.
That, which is far more frustrating, I have to say, than kind of an immediate challenge which you can fix. But there's been opportunities in it.
Yeah. I mean, so in terms of your you had an online presence. Was it like, did it take over your store sales, or did it supplement to a substantial amount? How has that fared over this time?
So our revenue is down. So the uplift online hasn't been the same as the drop in the revenue. But at the same time, clearly selling online has lower overheads. And with the furlough scheme and things, although the shops are still costing a lot of, there's still rent to be paid on them. There is other costs associated with them. Some of the costs were able to be put on hold. Big one being staff, by being able to furlough staff. They're the single biggest cost of running the store. That could go. So it probably, bottom line, about covered what we needed to. It meant that we could be safe, and it gave us the space to have a little bit of a chance to be flexible on it. So it's been interesting. Actually, just before being on with you, I've been talking through with a couple of the people the effect it's had on our margin, because it online has a lower margin with stores and the impact that's having.
You mean marginal cost or marginal profit?
The gross profit on an item, because of shipping, essentially. It costs us a lot to ship stuff around the world, and people forget this when they buy online. That you might have rent on a high street store, but we don't have to pay lots and lots of shipping on it. So I don't know if that answered your question, but kind of. Our revenue's down, and it's interesting because we're potentially preparing for a fundraise this year. We haven't pulled the trigger on it yet, but we're kind of doing the prep work on it, and we were talking about what our current turnover is against kind of what the I don't know what the right word would be, kind of the correct turnover which reflects the size of the business is. So kind of adding in what we think the adjustment to it should be, given all the structures and things that we have in place. Because it's 7 figures that's been removed from the top line by not having the shops open, obviously.
Wow. Yeah. No. Huge hit. Yeah. So in terms of just speaking about the numbers, how have you managed to fund this growth? Has it been all organic, or have you seeked certain like external funding options?
Sure. So there's been various bits. So I said that we started the business on some savings we had to get us through spring and a credit card, and agreeing payment terms with suppliers straight away. And that got us through the kind of market stage. When we decided we wanted to open the store, we took a startup loan. I think that scheme had only been out for about a year. And so we had a 25k startup loan each. Myself and Krisi had 12.5 each. And that let us open the store. Then when we did the next 2 stores, Bristol and Tunbridge Wells, by doing that kind of pop-up route with Tunbridge Wells, it kept the costs down. And we took advances on our card payments, which again now is more of a thing, but at the time I think they'd only just come out. So we worked with a payment provider called iZettle, who we actually still use in stores, and we had a pretty good relationship with them because we were one of the first clients who opened in a store, and then we were one of the first clients who was opening in a few stores. And they said, we're thinking of launching this thing, so if you want to test it, why don't you take an advance with us? And I think it was about a 25, it might have been more, it might have been 50k. it was a fairly large advance from them, and that's what funded opening the next stores. We then, in 2017, we did a crowdfund, so an equity crowdfund via Crowdcube. So we raised 365k, and that's what allowed us to open our next 4 stores. Since then, we have used some debt. So we were talking about Funding Circle before, so we've taken some loans from Funding Circle. We've tended to use debt where it's for something quite specific, rather than just general growth, if you like.
Right. So something that you think that you can get a return on, or, I mean, all capital that you raise, I guess you want to invest it in infrastructure or something that you think will pay you back at a higher rate.
That's it. Yeah. So I think we've kind of taken the attitude that we used the equity when it was purely for growth, and it was getting chucked at new stores, which we know they take a little while to hit profitability. They needed covering. Whereas with the loans, it's for kind of more. What is an example of something we've used them for? They've often been kind of to top up working capital, but we need to buy in stock, which we know we are going to shift over Christmas, that sort of thing. We're very Christmas heavy as a business, so often September is our peak cash flow issue, as we have all the stock due for payment, but we've not sold any of it yet.
It's definitely smart, and I think it's one of the only ways really to grow at speed as well. Because as you said at the beginning, you had one store, but you knew that in your mind that you wanted more, you wanted to make this a lot bigger. And I think doing that through financing options that you've explored is absolutely great. For the Crowdcube, did you get anybody involved, like a consultant, in order to help you polish it up, or was it all yourself?
No, we didn't get any consultants involved. We'd been really fortunate that we'd met people along the way who had offered their support, either had asked whether they could invest. So we had a few people who had said they were interested in investing, or kind of people who'd just given us their business card and said, hey, if you ever want to chat, give me a call, and have kind of moved to become mentors. And then when we did that, quite a few of them investors as well.
Great.
And we'd always been able to do that sort of thing just by kind of Krisi and I bumbling along. And I think our naivety people seem to quite like. I think because we knew that we were naive, but we were willing to put the work in and learn it. And it was funny that people used to say, when to sort of read newspaper things where we were mentioned, it would say young couple, Krisi and Mike. And suddenly that young went, and all of this sort of forgiveness of naivety disappeared at about the same time. But I think when we did the Crowdcube raise, we just played on that a little bit and kind of said, there's loads of people on here doing raises where they're talking about how they're going to sell for exactly this amount in this many years to this company. We haven't got a clue what the exit might be. We don't understand all that. We do have, we're pretty honest people, and we understand that if people are investing in us, we need to provide an opportunity for them to get their money back at some point, but we don't know what that's going to look like. And I think it seemed that people actually quite liked us just having that honesty about things. I mean, our raise on Crowdcube, it was only publicly available for 3 hours or 4 hours or something. I think we broke records with it.
Wow.
So it went very, very well. So I think people quite liked that we were just, open, and here's where we are, here's what we're good at. It also fit with, what are we good at? We're good at creating a community. Well, that fits, a lot of our community wanted to invest in us because they feel a relationship with us, because they've come into the store and they've done all the rest and they feel part of it anyway. So investing in us is just another step in that journey for them, which obviously supported us.
That's fantastic. Yeah, really. I mean, I think if you're genuine, your genuineness comes across, and I think you're not shades and mirrors or smokes and mirrors, should I say? You just come across as a normal guy. So it's people like that. not somebody who's just gonna take all the money and run off to Cuba or something. But
I've realised in the last couple of years why it is. I think it's that you meet all these people who are doing these businesses and they're like that, and they're so intelligent. And I think I haven't got the brains to do all that. I say it to our team. I'm like, I don't have a sort of subconscious. It's just what I say is what's going through my head at the time. And so it seems to work.
It works. So just Mike, year one, could you just share some numbers with us? So what did year one look like versus sort of pre-COVID? How big had you grown this?
So the first year when we were just doing markets, or we opened the store in month 12 of our first year as a limited company, we did about 70k. Then when we opened the store, that went up to about 350, somewhere in that sort of region. It took us a couple of years to get up to above 1 million. When we did the crowdfund, I think that we were at about 1.2 million turnover. I think when we did that, and we're now north of 4 million. But as I say, with what was about 60% of the business's revenue from the stores just turned off for this year, essentially. I know they've been able to open a little bit, but barely.
It's not the same. Yeah. Especially
Yeah.
you have to limit all your customers that are coming in, etc. So it's all a bit funny, isn't it? That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's really good to hear. And so, what does 2021 look like for you? Are you? I mean, obviously, it's hard to plan at the moment with the COVID and the environment. But what are you trying to do to make 2021, a good year, and 2022 and beyond?
Sure. So we've definitely got exciting times ahead. And we when we shut the stores and we said to everyone, we said, there will be opportunities here. I know it seems miserable. But we're fundamentally a pretty strong business, and as long as we can get through the initial critical bit, we'll be able to come out better for it. So we've kind of moved on to that stage now. So we're just about to launch our new website, which has been an unbelievably huge project to create a website which should look about the same to a customer as well. It's changing all the platform on the background of it. So we're in the kind of final manic stage before that launches in a couple of weeks. And that will massively, really exciting. It should allow us to do a lot more online that we've wanted to do to elevate our experience.
Out of interest, what are you moving from, and what are you moving to in terms of the platform, if you don't mind me asking?
We're moving from Magento to Shopify.
Great.
Whether that's a good idea, you can ask me again in a year or two. But it certainly solves a lot of the issues Magento has. Whether it has the flexibility that we want, I remains to be seen, but we'll see. So we're doing that. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, we're for the first time moving to our own warehouse rather than just units within a building, which is really exciting. So we've got this massive, great big shed, which is when I go on, it's going through the legals at the moment. So I'm there every now and then sorting out contractors and things, and it's slightly mind-blowing how big it is. So that'll have a factory shop in it, which is exciting. So that's a huge move to us, because I felt like our stores are really good, and they're inspiring places for our team to work. But then all of our back of house team, who through this year are the ones who've been slogging away doing evening shifts and Sundays and all the rest, are in a pretty uninspiring space. So I'm really excited to be giving them an inspiring space to work from. We are planning to continue opening stores. So we had been aiming to do 4 new stores a year. This year we've done, or will do 3. So we're coming to the end of a financial year at the moment. So we actually have one in Oxford, which has been ready since before Christmas, but we haven't been able to open the doors to because of lockdown. So as soon as this lockdown ends, that one will be opening. We opened one on Portobello Road, and that's an example of opportunities that this gives. We could never have afforded to be on Portobello Road a year ago. But one came up and we said to the landlord, we don't know what it's worth, but here's what we can afford. And it's less than half what it was on the market for before. And the landlord said, yeah, go on then, have it for a few years, see if it works for you.
Fantastic. Love that.
Yeah. We opened a second shop in Brighton, so down on the beach. And next year we're planning on doing another 4 as well, and hopefully we'll find some opportunities and be able to take advantage of it. And it's not just actually about the rent and the opportunity of the getting a good deal on the rent. The big one for us is the people. That retail is having a really tough time at the moment, and one, it's quite nice to be able to create jobs in an industry which is not doing that in general. But from a commercial point of view, we can hire the most incredible people at the moment. Some of I believe the best hires that we've done have been this year. because great retail people are excited to see a brand which, when going through this, is still investing in their stores and is still planning on growing. So it's a great time for us to get people into the business.
That's great. I love that you've managed to sort of see the best from a bad situation and see yourself through, given obviously you was in a strong position before, and you're only going to, I guess once this is all over, it's going to be all guns blazing and all throttles going. So yeah, it's really exciting. Fingers crossed. Touch wood.
Yeah.
Mike, before we go, any parting words to our audience, which are entrepreneurs that might be in a similar position to you or just starting out?
Oh, I don't know. If just starting out, then it's definitely just to do it. Exactly what we were saying at the start about finding ways to test it, but getting on with it. So many people have ideas of things they want to do, and they spend their time looking for reasons not to do it. And I've noticed on a kind of project that we're working on, I've been doing the same for the last few months. I only clicked it the other day that if I was talking to myself, I'd be saying, well, just get on with it. It doesn't matter that you don't know what you're doing. That'll come with time. People further down the line, I guess the big thing is focusing on the culture of a business and the people. That's what, this year, if we didn't have such incredible people, we would have really, really struggled / not survived. And I think that is the difference between okay and good or great these days. The world's very transparent. The way that you treat your team and the way that you respect your team says a lot about you, and it feeds through into everything else.
Couldn't agree more. You're only as good as your people, almost, right? So, Mike, super thank you for joining us on the show. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed our chat. Where can people find Bird and Blend if they haven't already?
At the moment, only online at birdandblendtea.com. When we are open, we're based down here in Brighton, as I said, and have stores in 3 of them in London. So Borough Market, Angel, Portobello Road, plus Bristol, Nottingham, Manchester, Oxford when that one opens, Cardiff, and Tunbridge Wells. And I hope I haven't forgotten anyone there. I think I got them all. Normally I list them in order we opened. I didn't do that this time.
Well, I'm sure people will find you somehow, somewhere.
The addresses are on the website.
Mike, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. Cheers.
Hi, everybody. It's Richard here. Just a final note to say thanks for listening to the show. What was most interesting to me, talking to Mike, was how him and Krisi validated their business idea through selling on the market. I think this is a fantastic low-cost, low-risk way to validate your idea if you plan to sell physical products. I think it's crucial to validate before going big and investing lots of time and money. And it was nice to see that's the approach that Mike and Krisi took. Also, it was great to hear Mike talk about his expectations of the retail stores. They're not expecting to make huge profits from their stores, but essentially use these locations to build more brand awareness so they have more customers that will order online. I think this is a definite trend that we're going to see continue, but it's something to be aware of if you're looking to launch a retail business. One thing to note is the high street's beaten up right now, and Mike and Krisi have used this to negotiate down their most recent lease in Portobello Road. So if you are looking to open up a retail store, it's a buyer's market at the moment. So make sure that you use that leverage and negotiate the best price you can, because ultimately you're taking the risk. So that's it. I really hope you enjoyed the show. Check us out on Instagram. It's Just Business HQ. Also check out our website at www.itsjustbusiness.co. Thank you for listening.